rare times that I go to sleep mad, it's almost like I wake up madder the next morning. It's like the emotions marinade overnight, right? But that Saturday morning, that next day, I woke up and I was excited. I was full of life. It was like fresh wind blowing into my lungs. I was ready to take on the world. I was on top of it, man. And the very first words that entered into my mind were to help people like Paige and Mia, which I immediately interpreted as to help people with severe disabilities like they had.
Hello and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Carole Buccellato. As I've told you many times, I've traveled the world over and I've met very interesting people with stories that motivate me and I'm sure can motivate you. Such a person is our guest today. His name is Clay Boatright, a native of Memphis, Tennessee. Clay Boatright has lived in Texas since 1994, where he and his wife, Carole, raised 3 daughters, including identical twins with severe intellectual disabilities and autism, something I know about with one of my own great-grandchildren. With undergrad and graduate degrees from the University of Memphis, Clay managed 2 full-time careers for almost 20 years, one, of course, to pay the bills, and the other as a volunteer advocate for people with disabilities. Over the years, Clay developed a deep understanding of the disability industry complex and served on a host of health and education advisory committees, including Board of Texas for both the ARC of Dallas and the ARC of Texas. In 2011, President Barack Obama appointed Clay to the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities in Washington, D.C. And in 2013, he was appointed founding chairman for Texas Health and Human Services IDP System Redesign Advisory Committee. A whole lot to do, and he held that position for 6 years. He's published multiple times in various media. Clay is often contacted by legislators, the media, nonprofit organization, and of course, parents of children with disabilities that are seeking help. Following Carole's unfortunate death in 2020 from ovarian cancer, Clay maintains a close relationship with his daughters and embraces the future with enthusiasm and the desire to help everyone know that God has a plan for their lives. His personal motto is, life is too important to take it seriously. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest for today, Clay Boatright. Clay,
Thank
so
you,
nice to have you here.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
So you're an old hand at some of these things, I can tell, because you're wearing the earplugs and you got the screen over your microphone. This is not a new endeavor for you. You've been doing this.
I've been blessed to have a couple of conversations with people and realize that maybe if I had the right equipment, I can make it a little bit smoother. So no, it's good. I've been, like I say, very, very blessed to meet some pretty cool folks like yourself.
Thank you. I find that an honor because I'm really intrigued with your story. As I said, I know firsthand about certain issues of autism. I have a great-grandchild who is autistic, but I also admire people who recognize that there is a mission in this, that so many people need help, and not only help, but as a society, we need to organize and form structures to help these people. And that's what you do, basically.
That's what I try to do. And thank you for sharing about your grandson. How old is he?
He's 20, my great-grandson.
Oh, great-grandson, I'm sorry.
21 years old.
Your great-grandson is 21 years old?
Yes.
Okay, I need to wrap my head around that. I need to wrap my head around that for a second.
I'm 81 years old. So
really?
I have a great-grandson.
That's outstanding. Good for you. If I may ask one more question, is your great-grandson, is he conversational? Is he able to?
Oh, yes. He's very competent and he's very skilled at many things.
Okay.
He's a very talented photographer and he works with his mother on projects, commercial projects. He's an amazing person. I love him dearly. Amazing person.
Oh, it's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing about that.
So tell us about your life and your family. Mm-hmm. I know that you have the 2 beautiful girls that are the start of why you got involved in this ministry. Talk to us a little bit.
Sure. Thank you. Well, I'll run down the quick chronology. So as you shared in the opening, my late wife, Carole, and I were born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. That's where we met. Got married when I was 24, she was 23. And a year after that, moved to St. Louis. And in St. Louis, that's when we had our first adulting experience. Carole was 24 at the time and was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. And Hodgkin's disease is a form of lymph node cancer.
Yeah.
So went through that, survived it. She survived it well. And the doctor suggested we wait a few years to have kids. We said, okay. So during that time, we moved to Houston, then here to the Dallas area. And about 8.5 years into the marriage, we had our first child, Blair. She's our oldest. She's our traditional adult child now. So she's 26 and is about to have a baby come August, next month.
Congratulations.
My first grandchild. So that'll be exciting.
Congratulations.
And then 3 years after she was born, Paige and Mia, who are my identical twins, were born. And at first, we thought everything was okay. They were born premature, but that's not unusual for twins. And then as time went on, we noticed that they seemed to be developing slowly compared to their big sister, and then compared to other kids as well. And then again, people just said, it's no big deal. Twins develop slowly. They were premature. Don't worry about it. Well, we got to the 24-month well baby visit at the pediatrician. And you go for those well baby visits, and they give you these developmental milestone checklists, okay, where it's like 25 questions and you check off doing this, doing that, and just to make sure everybody's on track. Well, Carole's holding one twin. I'm holding the other. And we each are checking off the list for the twin we're holding. And we get to the bottom and looked at each other and realized neither one of us had checked anything off the list. We're like, well, that's probably not good. So a pediatrician came in and said, yes, something's going on here. So he sent us over to Easter Seals. This would be in 2002. Sent us over to Easter Seals. And that's where we got the original assessment and diagnosis of intellectual disabilities. That's how we refer to it now, is intellectual disabilities and autism. So that launched us on a unique road and some unique experiences that we had not planned for.
Yeah, sure.
And again, unlike some disabilities that are diagnosed prenatally, we had no reason to think that there was anything unusual going on. And then as time continued to progress, the gap between Paige and Mia and their traditional developing peers continued to widen. So today, Paige and Mia are 23 years old. They've never spoken, so they are nonverbal. In the disability industry, they need help with what's called all ADLs, activities of daily living, ADLs.
Mm.
So they need help with everything bathroom related, everything getting dressed and undressed. They can feed themselves, and they are mobile, which is good. I used to laugh. The great thing is they're mobile. The challenge is they're mobile.
Yeah.
so sometimes they can get a little fast. That's calmed down a little bit since they've gotten older. And anyway, so that's the history on Paige and Mia.
And so then you got involved as an advocate, and the deeper you got, the more you recognized that there was a community out there that needed help in the organization and
Right.
running it, so forth. So much so that you were named by the past president Barack Obama to this committee that I'm sure took a lot of your time.
Well, it's interesting. It's funny how God is a lot smarter than we are, and we need to get over it. And he allows things to play out because I truly believe he has a grand scheme and a grand plan that he does not clue us in on. And our job basically is to follow in faith and respond when opportunities present themselves. And that's kind of what happened to me. So, Paige and Mia, I mentioned, were diagnosed when they were 2 years old. Well, about 2 years after that, it was a Friday night, and we were having a rough night at home. Okay, so Paige and Mia were having some behavioral issues, kind of meltdowns. We couldn't really understand why, but they're having meltdowns. Blair, the big sister, she's upset. Carole was frustrated. It's funny. I was married to Carole for 30 years. I think I saw her cry 3 times in 30 years. She would be more likely to if she would get mad and like rip your throat out. She wouldn't cry about it. She was a hard chick, sweet, but I mean, she was tough. But she was upset. I did what any good father leader would do in a situation like that. I went to bed. And I'm like, I can't. Yeah, exactly. You know what? I can't fix it. Some things are just out of my control. Everybody's safe. That's what's important. I'm just going to go to bed. So I go to bed that Friday night, and I'll be honest with you, Carl. I was mad at God. I really was. Now, I mentioned Paige and Mia's diagnosis was something we had not signed up for. So my family's all upset. I'm frustrated. And I'm laying in bed, and I'm talking to God, kind of yelling at him, really. And I remember asking with absolute clarity, I said, God, why did you do this to Paige and Mia? Okay, why did you create their disabilities or allow them to develop? And, you could have interceded, but you didn't. Why'd you do this to Paige and Mia? And to be blunt, why'd you do this to me? This is not what I signed up for. And that question was on my mind as I fell asleep. Is God, why did you do this? Now, I don't usually go to sleep mad. If I do, sometimes it's the rare times that I go to sleep mad. It's almost like I wake up madder the next morning. It's like the emotions marinate overnight, right? But that Saturday morning, that next day, I woke up and I was excited. I was full of life. It was like fresh wind blowing into my lungs. I was ready to take on the world. I was on top of it, man. And the very first words that entered into my mind were to help people like Paige and Mia, which I immediately interpreted as to help people with severe disabilities like they had. At that time, I was working in a sales and marketing research job that was paying the bills, trying to take care of the family, doing all the things you're supposed to do when you're a young family. And kind of serving others really was not on my list at all, would never have crossed my mind. So as sure as you and I are having this conversation right now, there is zero doubt in my mind. I fell asleep asking God a question. God, why did you do this? And he sent the Holy Spirit and answered it with absolute clarity. That answer was to help people like Paige and Mia, people with severe disabilities like them. So as I'm laying in bed that Saturday, again, I'm excited. I'm invigorated. My adrenaline's rushing. Kind of two great things happened at that moment. Number one was it happened. Okay. Number two was I had the wherewithal to realize it. So I'm laying there thinking, did God just talk to me? I mean, it sounds a little fanciful, but literally that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, I know what just happened. So what do you do about it? So I thought and got up and I did what millions of people do every day when they have questions. I Googled it. So I went to my computer, sat down at the family computer and typed 4 words. And I'm going to ask apologies. The vernacular has changed over time. So this is 2004 vernacular. The diagnoses have changed since then, but I'm going to use the words that we were using at the time. So the 4 words were mental retardation. We now refer to it as intellectual disabilities. Back then it was mental retardation. So you type mental retardation, Dallas, help. Okay, I live in Dallas, help. Why do they have disabilities? Well, help people. So I typed those 4 words, hit enter. Up came an organization, a nonprofit organization I had never heard of before called the Arc of Dallas. As an aside, the ARC system in the United States is the oldest series of nonprofit organizations serving people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I looked at their website and said, well, this looks like an organization that helps people like Paige and me.
Sure.
So on a Monday morning, I reached out to them, and I'm going to compress the next 18 years into about 45 seconds. I reached out to them. And they said they were looking for some new board members. I went and met their president and their executive director, got on their board. Within a couple of years, I was their next board president. During this time, I'm getting heavily involved in the kind of the nonprofit world. I'm meeting other nonprofit leaders and organizations in the Dallas area. I'm meeting families. I'm understanding the issues that families are facing. A couple of years into that, I got on the statewide nonprofit, the Arc of Texas, which does a lot of legislative work. So I started meeting legislators, state senators, state representatives, going down to Austin and meeting the executive commissioners for health and human services and getting to know the people involved in the support system. And again, continuing to learn all these things. And along the way, I'm meeting families and able to share with them kind of what I'm learning along the way. You mentioned the presidential appointment. That happened about 9 years in. From that Friday night where President Obama appointed me to a national advisory committee in Washington. So the kind of cool thing about all that is I basically got charted onto a whole new life path. I mean, I was up to that point just doing the traditional sales marketing gig, and then a Friday night happens, and I realized my passion, and I use that word deliberately, as defined by God, was to serve families and people like my own, like my children. And the first job was just to pay the bills, the sales and marketing thing. This was now the passion. And I feel very blessed in that I got to meet a lot of people, got to share my experiences, got to hopefully work on legislation and do things to improve our overall support system. But what was interesting was as time went on, I realized, I am blessed to know thousands of people. And I mean that number literally. I'm blessed to know thousands of people. 95% of them have no idea what I do for a living. Absolutely none. But everybody knew what I did for free.
Yeah.
And that was the passion being reflected.
Yeah. And that's the gateway to heaven right there.
Exactly. So that's kind of the first testimony, which is something that isn't, I mean, it's my story, but I think the parallel, which is really important for everybody, is realizing that, I had a family, and it's my family, so I can say this. I had a family nobody would sign up for. Okay. I had a family that'd scare the crap out of any, rational person. But God's smarter than I am. He had a plan for it. And once I kind of was enlightened to that and started to pursue it with vigor, suddenly my family was no longer anything to be embarrassed by. It wasn't an albatross. It wasn't holding me back. It was the opposite. It was the fuel to kind of become, call it my identity, become my family's identity, and in the process to help others. There's a Bible verse that it's my favorite verse in the Bible. It's not one of the top 20. It's not one that most people would know off the top of their head, but it's one of those verses that if everybody just did this, ignore the whole rest of the Bible, just do this verse, we'd be doing all right. It's 1 Peter 4:10. Okay, 1 Peter 4:10 goes this way. Each one should use the gifts he or she have been given to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. Each one should use the gifts he or she have been given to serve others, faithfully administering God's gifts God's grace in its various forms. And I love that verse because it really speaks to all of us. The opening, each one, okay, that's everybody, got it. Should do what? Should use the gifts he or she have been given. Okay, we each have gifts. Who do our gifts come from? They come from God. Should use the gifts God have given us for what purpose? To serve others. Pretty straightforward. Why? To faithfully administer God's grace in its various forms. In other words, it's saying God gave each one of us, regardless of our IQ, regardless of our ability to speak, regardless of all these other things, he gave each one of us some unique skills and talents. And what he wants us to, the reason he did that is what he wants us to do is to use those skills and talents to serve each other. Because when we're doing that, we are quite literally bringing God to other people because we're using the skills and talents he gave us to serve them.
That's right.
And I didn't come to this overnight. I didn't wake up. I described to you Friday night, waking up Saturday morning. It's not like, the next day I woke up with this aha, but it's something I was blessed to kind of discover over time. And that's kind of what I tried to share with people is recognizing it doesn't matter how tough your situation is, because everybody's got stuff. It's more, how are we going to respond to it? That's important.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I love the attitude, the statement that you're saying, because I remember reading it in the Bible that it says, "Who much is given, much is expected." And when he has given us these gifts and these opportunities and the talents to reach people and share the message, then it's an obligation to do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We have to do it. And sometimes it seemed, I'm sure there was sometimes in the dark of night in the early beginning when you said, can I really do it? Am I able to do it? I know God told me to do it and I'm agreeing to do it, but do I have what it takes to do it? and then you do it. Then
No,
you just get up and you do it.
there is that. One of the things I've noticed though is when we're acting out or bringing through a passion God has given us, you kind of just charge in, and I think, and God will equip us along the way. Sure, it's natural to have butterflies in the stomach and concerns, but God will make it happen. You mentioned in the opening, I have two careers, parallel careers for 20 years, both for about 40 hours a week. For 15 years, I got 4 hours of sleep a night. Even now, I can't get more than 5.5 hours of sleep a night. My body's not conditioned to it. Every health professional will tell you that's terrible. I don't know, works for me. And it enabled me to put a roof over my family's head, but also to bring through this ability to help others, which I consider a God direction. And I never backed off from it. One thing I've learned about passions is if you're truly passionate about something, and I'm not just talking about stuff you like. I mean, when I use passion, there's a God connection there. If you're working on something that God has kind of coded into you, you don't get tired. You don't. Oh yeah, maybe eventually, but you don't complain about it. That's probably the better way to look at it. You don't complain about being tired. You fight through it, and you don't even view it as a fight. You're just plowing through because you've got the energy. I use the example: you've got wind in your sails. You you got that enthusiasm. You've got that adrenaline going. Well, that's what it's about. But anyway, so that's kind of the first blessing that I have is the blessing of having some unique challenges. And a lot of people think that sounds weird. When we think about blessings, we naturally think about the positive things in our lives. Well, to me, a blessing is anything that God's involved in. Okay. Yes, when we have a nice home, great family, good job, those are definitely blessings, no doubt about that. But as I alluded to a moment ago, sometimes God, being smarter than we are, will allow things to play out that we don't necessarily like. Well, just because we don't like it doesn't mean it's not a blessing. And that's where the basic concept of faith comes in, is understanding that even though I may not have signed up for this, I'm going to trust God because He's letting it play out. Then that it's the right thing to do. We were talking about my late wife. So raising our family was a bit crazy, and in fact, I referred to my family as the Boatright Circus. It was a little different. And once we got everybody out of the house, so Blair, my oldest, went off to college. We got her out. She was employed. We were able to get a great group home set up for our twins, not too far away from where we live. So they were being taken care of. We were their guardians, but we didn't have to do the heavy lifting anymore. So that was good. And once everybody got out of the house, Carole decided to go back to work for the first time in 20 years. Kind of restart her career, got a good job she enjoyed. And then 6 months after she started her new job, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And I went through surgery and thought they got it, didn't get it all, then had to go through 18 months of chemo and ultimately passed away. So, you think through that. Okay, the challenges of raising the twins, and then finally get everybody out of that house and everything's set up. And Carole and I are ready to start kind of our new life together. Yeah. And she gets cancer and dies. There's a second testimony I'd like to share with you about that. So she died on February 11th, 2020. Okay, February 11th, 2020. She never heard the word COVID. She had never heard the word pandemic. She died a month before it hit. So February 11th, she passes away. Blair, our oldest, came back from Nashville where she was working for her mom's service. And 3 days later is Valentine's Day, okay, February 14th. So 3 days later is Valentine's Day. Blair and her boyfriend, now her husband, went out for Valentine's Day. And I went into a grocery store across the street from my neighborhood. And I'll be honest with you, I was, talk about sad and depressed. I mean, not just my best friend, my only friend for 33 years.
Yeah.
We were married for 30, dated for 30. My only friend for 33 years had just died. Okay. I had a 5-bedroom house I raised the kids in, but I am now in all by myself. Talk about quiet. Carole died in our bedroom. Talk about, I know what dead silence sounds like. So now I'm walking through this grocery store and I'm feeling, oh, woe is me. Life sucks. And what's going to be now? And God, why'd you do this? That whole, why are you picking on me again? And I'm walking through the store. I get to the aisle 9, hair care aisle. Don't know if that's relevant. This is where it happened. I'm sitting there in aisle 9. And kind of like that Friday night I described a moment ago, in an instant, everything changed completely. I went from being sad, depressed, downtrodden, teary-eyed, woe's me, life sucks, to excited, invigorated, smiling. Sounds weird. Very upbeat. And again, as sure as we're having this conversation, there is no doubt in my mind, God revealed 2 things to me with absolute clarity and faster than a blinking of an eye. Those 2 things were this. Number 1, Carole's doing great. My late wife, Carole's doing great. She's doing a lot better than you and I are. She is experiencing what all Christians aspire for, which is to have eternity with God.
Right.
And when I thought about that, I viewed it as God releasing me from having to mourn my wife, because you don't mourn somebody who's doing better than you are. Now, did I miss her? Of course so. Of course.
You
I'm not
downplaying. You mourn your loss of your friend. But you have to be happy for her salvation. Of course.
That's exactly right. Yeah, her faith in Jesus Christ took care of that for not only herself, but it took care of it for me. So I didn't have to mourn her. The second had to do with me. So the first had to do with her. The second had to do with me. So I was 55 years old at the time. I'm 58 now. So I was 55. For the first time in my adult life, I had virtually no obligations and responsibilities. My wife was in heaven. My oldest daughter was out of college and working full time and doing well. We had a great group home set up for our twins where their care was being taken care of, and I was involved. I was barely responsible for myself. Okay. So I also realized, all right, I don't have any obligations or responsibilities. I'm 55 years old, God willing, and I use those words literally. I may still have I've been married for 30 years. I may still have another 30 ahead of me.
Sure.
Right? I'm only halfway there.
Right.
I'm only halfway there, right? I'm only halfway there. No obligations or responsibilities. And I could quite literally do whatever I want. I paused for a minute and thought, well, heck, that's not a bad place to be. So it's not a matter of everything coming to an end. It's the opposite. There's a whole new beginning. And standing there in the grocery store, I launched what I refer to as Clay 2.0. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with the 1.0 version. But the 1.0 version was very traditional, live in the suburbs, got the job, doing the advocacy thing, school meetings, raising the kids, blah, 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 blah. So all good stuff and encompass the advocacy work that I talked about. So no complaints there. But Clay 2.0 was probably going to look very, very different because my circumstances were very, very different. Now, the $1 million question was, okay, God, you've presented this opportunity. What do you want me to do with it? Okay, so that was 3 years ago. And that's still an open switch. So one of the things I did is I followed the advice of a lot of family and friends who've known me over the years and seen the goofy things that I post on Facebook and my rather salaciously inappropriate but always respectful observations of a life. And I wrote a book. So I wrote a book called God's Plan, Our Circus, which is the title implies, it plays off the Boatright Circus thing, but how God has a plan, but sometimes when we bring it to fruition, as we're bringing it to fruition, from our standpoint, it looks like a crazy circus. That was a memoir sharing a lot of the experiences that I had, that we had raising our children, a lot of the challenges with school systems and doctors and so on, but all respectful. It really, I don't get into medicine at all. I get into the relationships and how we deal with people and how we engage each other and how respect is important. I was talking to a friend the other day, said something nice. She said that apparently I'm easy to talk to. So she said that's I'm a pretty easy person to talk to. And I said, well, thank you. And I thought about that, and I realized the the key to being an easy person to talk to is just always show respect. If you're always showing respect and appreciation for whoever you're engaging with, and they sense that, they sense that they're not being judged, that they're being respected, people will tell you anything. They'll tell you absolutely
Just be
anything.
pleasant and listen.
Be pleasant and listen. It's funny. I was little non sequitur here. I've met a lot of people in the last few years. Well, let me do a quick recap. So the book is God's Plan, Our Circus. The subtitle is a family odyssey through autism, death, and reinvention. So autism is my children, death is my wife, reinvention is me. And there's some pretty heavy topics, but there's a lot of humor in it. There's a lot of faith in it. There's a lot of upbeat aspects to it. And hopefully you're sensing I'm kind of an upbeat guy. But the true comic relief in the book is the last chapter, which is the joys of dating in your mid-50s. That's a unique experience, something that I had not encountered, right? So I got a chance to meet a lot of people, and one of the things that I learned, and I put this in the last chapter because it occurs when I'm having a conversation with a lady, and she asked me for my story, getting to know people. You share your story, so I gave her the highlights, and when I was done, she said, "Well, Clay, all of us have experiences and challenges, baggage and drama." And I paused for a moment and I said, well, that's true. You're right. We all have experiences and challenges. However, baggage and drama are optional. It's all in how you choose to look at it. And happiness is a choice. So I put that in kind of the dating section at the end of the book. And then after I wrote it, I went back and looked at it and said, you know what? That's really an underpinning for the entire story. Because when I look at my crazy family and the experiences that we had, that again no right-minded person would have ever signed up for, throughout each one of those, there were a lot of challenges, but we never viewed it as baggage and drama. It was always a new opportunity. It was always something new to learn, or a new opportunity to meet somebody we had not met before, who could either, if they couldn't help us, well, maybe they could help another family. Those types of things. And when you look at opportunities that way. When you look at the passing of my wife, yes, I could have easily have been downtrodden and morbid and lived in the gutter. Luckily, I went to a grocery store one night. God opened my eyes. Chose but it was ultimately my choice not to look at it that way. We do have that ability to choose that, and when we choose to look for the opportunities and the upsides and the growth potential in things, my goodness, that changes everything. Changes not only our perspective, it changes our attitude, it improves our health, gives our ability to serve others in ways that we hadn't done before. That's what I get excited about.
That's marvelous information and I think a great message for people. All too often I meet people who they take what God has given them in their life and they see themselves as victims, or they're sad sacks. The why me never leaves them. That why me is there forever. And yet, if they just took the opportunity, as you said, to wake up with a thirst for today, a new day is happening today. I have a thirst for this day, and God has given it to me. My days are not over. They're in front of me. If people could live like that, that victim would go away very quickly, because we all have scars. All of us carry memories and scars. I was listening to your story, and there's so many places where we interact. We'll talk about it on screen, but there are many, many, many things. The thing is to accept that God has given you a life, and that life is to live, and it's to live with Him and His message within you to share with other people. To me, that's the greatest thing in the world.
I completely agree. I 100% agree with you. And one thing I urge a lot of people to do is, we as a society, often spend so much, or we as individuals in our society spend so much time to try and create an image that we want other people to see about us, right?
Yeah.
So we try to hide the scars. Not me. I love the scars. I've got some gray hair. popping up here. I'm not. Well, it's funny. I got to tell you, Carl. I'm looking at your gray hair, and I'm like, oh my, that you've got the mane that I'm looking for. I want to eventually have
That's
that.
white.
I know that's a good looking head of hair,
gray.
There, my
It
man.
turned gray in my 40s. It turned white
Okay.
in my 60s.
That is I am looking at a silver fox right now. That's a good look. That's a good looking look, boy. And I say that respectfully because, and I have a feeling. Tell me if I'm wrong. I have a feeling this is true for you. I know it's true for me. Yeah, I have no intention of ever coloring my gray. Why?
Never.
I earned every one of them, brother. Absolutely, and that's where the story is. People talk about wanting to hear other people's stories, and great, uplifting. Hearing about people's successes is magnificent, but I always like to hear about the challenge. I want to hear tell me about the fire you went through.
That's right.
If you're comfortable showing me the scars, show me the scars, and tell me how you got those to heal and how'd you get through them, because that's where I think and you may be able to help me on the Bible verse about the forging of iron, forging in fire. That
Yes, when you take iron and you forge it into hot place and it's into ice, it becomes forged into steel, and steel is much stronger than iron ever was.
Yeah.
And I have a verse that I like, and I tell it to my kids all the time. It's from Hebrews, and it says, "March on, my soul, be strong." If you march on with a recognition that strength is within you and it guides your path ahead of you, you never fall. You may stumble, but you're never going to fall. You get up again.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's good.
So what are you into now that you want the people to know about that they can help support or contribute to, other than buy that wonderful book that I'm going to do as soon as we hang up? I'm sure it's on Amazon.
It is. I appreciate it's on Amazon, and it's on barnesandnoble.com. It's also, if you go to clayboatright.com, that's CLAYBOATRIGHT. There's no W, clayboatright.com. You can pick it up there. You can also see other things that I offer to help others. It's more about just getting the story out and trying to inspire people to look at life a little bit differently. And that's the best thing. That's really the best thing I'm trying to do is if people choose to buy the book, I'm honored and flattered by that. I'm told it's a pretty easy read. Most people are knocking it out, a few days. You knock it out, and it's got, like I said, a lot of humor in it. There's ups and there's downs. You're talking about a 55-year-old guy going on dates. That's going to get you in trouble. So it's a little bit of something in there for everybody. But that's the biggest thing that I'm pushing right now.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, all of Clay's contact information will be in the show notes. So you don't have to worry about it. When the show is produced, you just look down on the bottom of the screen. You will see how to contact him, his email address, how to reach him, all his different addresses and the associations he's part of. And I know that you will want to reach out to him and thank him for his words of wisdom. But you may also want to reach out to him, as he so generously has said, if there's an issue that you have in your own family, with your own people, with your own children, I'm sure he'll be happy to contact you and talk to you about it, or direct you to the right people. Because we live in this community of God where we are bound to one another. And whatever we do for one another, God smiles. That's what we're supposed to do. So, any closing comments you'd like to make to the folks?
No, you've hit on the key themes, and I appreciate the opportunity. I think probably the biggest thing that I want people to take away is, now I describe part of this in the book. I've again been blessed with some very unique challenges, and I've also been blessed with some nice opportunities, like the opportunity to meet you, Carl, and to have this conversation. Well, throughout my life of the ups and downs, there were when things were positive. I never believed that I deserved it. I don't believe I deserve anything. Okay, but any positive has been a true blessing, and it's through the grace of God. So even though I believe that's from God's grace, Throughout my life, I've always tried to keep my compass centered on three things. And those three things are this. Number one is to always remember that God is with us, even in the toughest times. Even in the toughest times, God's with us.
Especially.
Number two was to always appreciate what we had. Okay. So often we put effort on expectations. What we think we expect. What do we deserve? Or how do we expect other people to act? I don't expect anything from other people. I appreciate them for whatever they bring. Okay. So always appreciate what we have and appreciate others. And the third one, and this is specific to me. I cannot comment on anybody else's family or personal situation, and I trust others to make the right decisions that are right for them. But for me, there was no chance that I would ever abandon my family, no matter how tough it got. Um, do I think God rewarded that 3-point compass? I don't know, but it helped kept me centered, and it provided clarity for me a lot of times when I was going through challenges. Is remembering, what, it's tough, but God's still with us. Lord, thank you for what you've given me, and part of what you've given me is this screwball family, and by golly, they're mine. And I'm going to love them, and I'm going to take them to the end. So.
Wonderful advice. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to you with a new show every other Wednesday morning, and we bring people like Clay. We bring people who have lived it, are living it, and have heard the word and are willing to share it. And I want to say what I say to you every time. If you have a story to tell, and I know you have a story to tell, everybody has their own story and it's unique. Make sure you share it with your loved ones, with your friends. Write it down, because when it's too late, it's too late. That message is gone if you don't share it. God wants you to share your memories, and he wants you to share your wisdoms at the same time. I also want to tell you, if you know somebody who you'd like to suggest to be on the show, like Clay was suggested by someone to me, either yourself or someone else, write it. Tell us the story. We'll talk with the people. And if they are suitable for this show, certainly they'll be on the show. In addition to that, some people like to write in and say, I don't agree with this or I don't agree with that. You have an open forum here. You want to disagree with something? Write to me. I'll be glad to discuss it with you. Online, if you like, even. Which could become quite a good deal of fun, too. So, the usual routine. If you like the show, subscribe. Say you like it. Pass it on to friends. But more important, there's a one single message I have to tell you that I tell you at the end of every show. I know I'm this big, blustery Italian guy from Brooklyn, and it seems unusual to hear it from someone like me, but it's important. Love somebody today. Grab them in a bear hug. Tell them you love them, because you may be the only one who ever whispers those words to them. Tell someone you love them today. Clay, I love you today.
Carl, I love you too, man. Thank you so much. You have made my day, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
I am a better person because of today, and that's because of you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I feel the same way. You're quite a guy. I really mean that. I feel honored that you've been on the show. And then we had a chance to talk. And maybe we'll do it again sometime.
That would be great. I would love to.